Hello and welcome to the Learn How to See Better podcast, the only podcast out there known to actually improve your vision the longer you listen. This is your host, Drew Davis, and I'm glad you've joined me here today. I can't wait to share some great information with you about how to improve your health, wealth, and relationships. So let's get right down to it, shall we? Hey everyone, it is Drew Davis and I am back with you today for another episode of the Learn How to See Better podcast. And in today's episode, I want to talk about how to learn how to believe better. Yes, how to learn how to believe better, because that's like a type of seeing if you really think about it. You know the saying, how it goes, seeing is believing. Well, maybe believing is really seeing. Because I think that the way that you believe has a lot to do with the way that you see. And if you believe that things are going to turn out a certain way, then guess what? That's your viewpoint of the world. And learning how to actually believe better, I think, comes from the simple fact of understanding that all of your beliefs are learned. They're actually taught to you, and you don't just really develop them just out of thin air, and that's one thing I learned about this statement, that all your beliefs are learned. Being able to learn this in my actual life and understanding it, I think really came after some time, because I go back and think about several different instances where I had certain beliefs about the way the world worked. I had certain beliefs about what a person should do in certain situations. I had certain beliefs about what you could and could not achieve as I went through the world, and I realized that as I had some of these limiting thoughts or limiting beliefs, they were all things that have been, imposed on me in one way or another by society, by the people that you're hanging around. And I mean, it can be so, it can be so, it can be so unexpected. It will hit you in the most random times. Let's take as an example, it's 5 o'clock on Friday of a 3-day weekend, and you couldn't get out of the office early, and now you're sitting in traffic with everybody else, and it's the middle of the summer. It's, call it 4th of July weekend, and it's hot, and you're just stuck in gridlock traffic. And somebody, cuts you off when, just this tiny little space between cars open, and they jump in front of you and slam on your brakes, and, you feel like, ah, and a lot of times you can feel the heat in your body just run through your veins as you think about how you want to respond or what you want to say to this person that just ever so rudely cut you off, or even do to them, right? And you see this sometimes. We've seen instances of road rage where somebody may actually jump out and attempt to cause harm to somebody else over being cut off on the road. And you think, okay, what really drives that? Did someone really get hurt or truly offended by that simple, incourteous traffic act? Well, the answer, of course, is no. But there are certain beliefs that a person has that would cause a situation where they might act in a certain way. Like, hey, this person disrespected me, and I'll just not have that, right? And they might go take action. And then I think that, when you want to really step back and analyze the situation, trying to view it from all angles, and if you were the individual that felt like, hey, I'm going to go let somebody know about themselves because they did me wrong in this way, I think that as we go and make that decision, it's important to pause and think, is this way of thinking serving me or robbing me? Because in all reality, you can fill in what serving me or robbing me is. I mean, in the case of road rage, you jump out of your car and go, choking somebody out. Next thing you know, you could be getting robbed of your freedom if you take it that far. But, in general, the beliefs you have, I know, I was taking my kids out to dinner the other night, and we were sitting, and there were some people talking at the table over, and unfortunately the language wasn't the best out of these individuals, and luckily my kids weren't paying too much attention, and I kept hearing the people in their conversation talking about someone else and saying, that's what you get. That's what you get. Just this real harsh, like they sounded like they were in a lot of pain. You know, they'd been wronged by someone and they were sounding excited that whoever this person is that possibly wronged them was now getting what they deserved. And I thought, wow, that's a very interesting, perspective to think, that's what you get. Um, I think it's a tricky one. I think it's a tricky one because I'm a parent of young kids and I've seen them, do things that, it's like right after you told them to do something, they go and do it and, maybe they bump their head or something, right? And that's one of those perfect scenarios where that's what you get. And you really think about that and if you pause for a moment, it says, okay, consider for a moment that line of thinking and that belief that if someone does something that's against what they ought to know better, that there's a punishment waiting for them that we should cheer for. That's what you get. And it's just those little things. It's like, okay, that thought pattern, is that serving you or robbing you? That's for you to decide. You tell me, right? But the fact that the beliefs we have are learned trickles into more than just personal and social interaction. I remember one time when I, first got out of school, I was making a decent buck, and I remember finding out that a colleague I was working with actually had her master's, and she was making about 20% more than me. And I thought, wow. Go figure. If I go and, upgrade my regular bachelor's to a master's, I can make an extra 20%. And I also remembered hearing as I got my career going, well, if you really want to get the big bucks, you need to get a degree and a certification and this and this and this and this and this. And hearing this from my peers, not knowing better or looking to find out on my own from my own experience if this was legit or not, I would find instances where I would start to believe that, gosh, I guess I can only succeed so far in my career financially because, I don't have that upper level degree. I don't have a master's. I don't have a PhD. And how unfortunate to not just work, if you fall in that trap and don't consider just perfecting your craft and becoming an expert at what you're hired to do. One of my mentors told me recently, and I love this phrase because it's so true, that we really can cut aside all the BS and just really get down to the nitty gritty. And the fact of the matter is, this quote here, results are your certification. I think that quote right there is something that speaks volumes because, at the end of the day, all the different accolades and everything else really don't mean diddly if you don't have the results. You want to know how I know? When I think back to childhood and the sports that I used to watch, I watched a lot of football and I would root for the Buffalo Bills. And the Buffalo Bills in the early 90s were like no other team. And from my perspective, they were the only team that had won an AFC championship 4 years in a row. Pretty amazing, right? Only one problem. They went to the Super Bowl the very next game and they lost all 4 Super Bowls. So they're also the only team that's lost all 4 Super Bowls in recent history. So you think of that scenario as it pertains to beliefs and how we can frame data in its proper context. We just have to make sure we understand and look at the world through the right lenses. So having a belief that you can only go so far or do so well or achieve certain things because other people say so doesn't really line up. And I think the travesty here is it can affect the way that we think about our future, right? If you believe that, oh, well, I don't come from money, so I won't ever be successful. That's a limiting belief that'll hold you back. You have to learn and understand or let life give you the feedback that this is not the case, my friends. Some people may feel that, I might have had a parent with a substance abuse problem, so I'm doomed to be an addict. Oh no, please don't fall into the trap of thinking or believing that way based on those prior experiences in your life. Okay, there might be a propensity that exists there for there to be that opportunity, but it does not have to end up that way. It makes me think of the story that's, famous. You hear about two twin boys, that were separated. Their dad was a drunk, and they find and catch up with these two boys, decade or two later, a couple of decades later. Now they're, both grown men, and they go and talk to, one guy who's extremely successful, runs multiple businesses, doing very well in his life. And they say, how do you attribute all your success? You've got so much going for you. And they say, and the guy says, what do you think? What would you expect of me? My dad was an alcoholic. I was never going to be like my dad. And so then they go and find the other brother. And as you might imagine, if I haven't, blown the story yet, they go and find the other, and he's a bumbling, stumbling drunk, just like his pappy. And they catch up with him and say, what do you have to say for yourself? You've made nothing of yourself. You're just, blubbering drunk, right? And his response is, guess what? You guessed it. No different than his brothers. What would you expect? My dad was an alcoholic. How'd you expect me to turn out? And it all has to do with beliefs. And so those beliefs are learned, but they can be reframed in the proper context to take something that can be viewed in one way as a complete negative and also be spun around into a complete positive. I gave you the football example, right? Some people might believe that, oh, this team's garbage. They haven't ever won a Super Bowl. And I'd say, hey, that's a pretty tough feat to be the champion of your conference for 4 years in a row. It's all how you frame that data. Have you ever talked to someone that, just got out of a divorce? And they say, you say, oh, how are you doing? Oh, I just got divorced. What do you say next to them? Do you say, oh, I'm so sorry for, it ended that way, right? Because, the fact of the matter is, love it or hate it, I mean, a lot of people are quite excited to have it finally be over at the end of divorce. I've actually been corrected. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear it. What are you talking about? It's time to celebrate. I never felt more free and da 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 da. But I had in my mind a belief that any divorce had to be bad, and maybe not bad is the word. Maybe painful. I could imagine there must be some of that, but maybe not necessarily bad. So again, it's just how you frame the beliefs you have. And I think what makes that particularly relevant is this scenario here. If you think that any particular circumstance in your life is going to have a encumbering effect on your success in the future, or limiting your ability to grow and reach your maximum potential, then it's unfortunate if you have a belief that says, I'm maxed out, or I'm going to be capped, or I'm going to be limited in what I can do. That's just not the case. Because if you believe that more is possible, that more is better, then you're going to be positioned to have a way and style of thinking that does serve you. If you believe when you see a problem that the way to look at the problem is, how can I solve this problem, versus I can't get past this obstacle. Those are two drastically different beliefs. So one person sees obstacle and says, I can't move forward. Another person sees an obstacle and says, how can I get past this obstacle? They're the person that's saying, I'll go above it, around it, I'll go through it if I have to. But they're thinking about solving problems. And it's so common in this day and age for people to run up against some obstacles and say, I can't. And, I've been taught can't means don't want to. Right? Can we really not do something, or do we just not want to? Because the older we get, we find that once we're adults, we pretty much do what we want to, within the confines of the law, of course. And even then, there's people that do what they want to outside the confines of the law, and we see kind of how that ends up going. But all I'm hoping to do is wake everyone up a little bit to get to a point where, if you find life in the scenarios that you go through and the experiences you're learning from, give you something that just kind of rubs you the wrong way, don't be so afraid to challenge, to take the actual feelings and sensations you're getting in your mind, your head, your heart, your gut, and to say, hey, this is that part of introspection where I was talking about, the multiple ways you can learn how to see better. This in that introspection category. You have to take a deeper look within yourself and kind of really analyze what you're experiencing. If you're just real feeling bad about a particular decision you made, or the way something sits with you, maybe it's a certain event or news that affects your life. If you're resonating at like a hostile or anxious frequency, it's a fair game to ask the question: is this way thinking that I'm thinking, is it actually helping me out, or is it hurting me in some way? Because if somebody does you wrong, is an easy example, right? Says something about you, slanders your name, spreads a rumor, and you're just fuming at the bit, and you can't wait to, do something to them or get back at them, or right the wrong, an eye for an eye. It's like, I get it. It's kind of a natural way to think. I think revenge is, somewhat feels natural. You hit me, I hit you back. But, the way of thinking, will it really serve you or rob you of the opportunity to potentially solve the real issue between two people, or maybe solve the real challenges that might be taking place in a relationship between a couple of people? So when you look at the beliefs that you have in your life, if you find that you either aren't feeling good about your past or your present or your future, a lot of that's defined by your beliefs. You believe a certain way about the past, right? You've taken the actions. Your best thinking has led you to exactly where you are right now. So we're all pretty much where we're supposed to be in life. So if you find that you're not happy with where you're at, and you look to your past and find discontent there are likely some beliefs in your world that you have learned that have not been serving you up until this point. And I'd even go as far as to say now's not really a time to, either cry over spilled milk or beat yourself up about what those results are. It's rather an opportunity to dig deep, look within, and ask that question: what am I thinking about? Is the way that I think helping me or hurting me? Is it bringing me up or taking me down? And you're going to know deep down inside what the answer is. And that's where you can start the process of just asking more questions. You may have some beliefs installed that aren't serving you, but you don't know what the right thing to believe is. But you can start the process of asking questions and digging deep within. Sometimes you just might need to sleep on it. The answers will be revealed. So that would be something that I think could benefit us all, learning how to believe better. We all have beliefs that have hindered us in one way or another. If we're not living our best life ever, chances are we have some beliefs that have come from somewhere, and they're more than likely coming from people that have cared about you or love you, but it doesn't mean that someone can't be sincere and incorrect, right? So that's just a little something I wanted to share with everyone, because it's one of the things I've been thinking a lot about lately as I look to level up with my own goals and aspirations. A lot of what I believe is possible is based on things that I've learned. So I need better input so I can have better beliefs about myself. And that would be the number one thing I would suggest anyone out there struggling with their belief for a better life, a better way, a better happiness, better relationships. It's going to start with some new programming to really give you better perspective on how to see better, how to believe better, right? Because the two go hand in hand. And once you develop some better beliefs about your outlook on life, that's when I think there's going to be more fuel for your fire to actually go and begin to pursue your goals with a little more gusto, a little more fervor. So with that, I will go ahead and leave everyone for this episode. And until next time, keep looking to level up and learn how to see better. Life's great on the other side. You just have to give yourself a moment and the proper opportunity to realize it. Take care, everyone. Talk soon. Well, all right. That was some great content, wasn't it? Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you liked it. This is your host, Drew Davis, and I want to thank you for listening to the Learn How to See Better podcast today. And don't forget to subscribe and tune in for future episodes, and be sure to share with a friend if you are enjoying this content. Thanks, and see you next time.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.